Welcome to the 2023 Candidates Debate hosted by the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters of New Canaan. Thank you to Town Hall for allowing us to use this space and to New Canaan Public Access Channel 79 for tonight's live stream. For those not here tonight, there are 3 ways to watch: on Channel 79, on 79's YouTube, and on the League's Facebook page. After tonight, a recording of this program will be available on Channel 79 and on our website. A reminder that edited or partial usage of tonight's program is not permitted. A short version of the League's Nonpartisan Voters Guide is being mailed to all New Canaan households, but access to the entire guide is on our website at lwvnewcanaan.org and on vote411.org. I want to thank all of the candidates who will be here throughout the evening. Thank you for your dedication to improving our town, for serving the public interest, for being willing to put yourself out there, and for participating in this fundamental cornerstone of democracy, the debate. Why, with social media and the internet, does debate still matter? Why not just find a group on social media that agrees with everything you think and leave it at that? It's because debate, a free and fair exchange of ideas between candidates, makes each of us better informed on the issues, on the stakeholders, on all the subtle and not so subtle outcomes a voting decision may have. Debate benefits all of us. It makes us better informed, so when we go to the polls, no matter which candidate we vote for, we do so knowing that we are making an educated decision based on information from multiple sides. For democracy to work, it needs an informed electorate. Participation tonight by each candidate and by each of you makes our democracy stronger, and I thank each of you for that. And now a note about the questions for tonight. Questions were solicited in advance from the public. We were delighted so many of you let us know the matters that you cared about most during this election. Following our nonpartisan guidelines, our carefully selected team reviews the questions and often rewrites them for comprehensiveness, fairness, applicability to all the candidates in the race, and relevance to the office. We are lucky to have with us tonight our moderator, Laura Smits. Laura is the former president of the League of Women Voters of Connecticut, a former registrar of voters, and a certified moderator in the city of Norwalk. Laura will be here as our official moderator to enforce the rules, while a select group of students from the New Canaan High School debate team will once again ask the questions. Before I conclude, I just wanted to take a moment to say how excited we are to once again have these students here with us. The poise, professionalism, and enthusiasm of these students is truly inspiring, and I hope everyone here and at home appreciates what a gift it is to have such civically minded students in our town. And I also hope you appreciate how brave they are to stand up here with us and participate. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Laura Smits.
Thank you very much. First, good evening. Thank you all for being here. First, a note about the rules, which I will enforce throughout the evening. Candidates have agreed in writing to detailed debate rules, which include sticking to the time limits, answering the questions being asked, refraining from speaking or making any disruptive noises outside of their allocated response time, and more. And as a reminder to each of the candidates, you may ask the presenter to repeat any question as needed. Audience, during the debate, let's respect one another by remaining quiet, no comments or buzzing from the floor. At the end of this debate, we ask that all of us, candidates and audience, please refrain from standing and moving around, chatting and handshaking, so that we can transition quickly and smoothly into our next debate. And now, let me introduce our first student presenter for the evening, Ankita Kutichiriel. Ankita is co-captain of the debate team and has competed both regionally and at national tournaments, and is president of the New Canaan High School Latin Club and a trained EMT. Ankita will ask the questions for this first debate. Ankita.
Welcome to our candidate debate for first selectman. Our candidates are Deanna Carlson and Amy Murphy-Carroll. Based on random draw, we will begin with opening remarks from candidate Carlson.
So I'd like to thank the League for hosting tonight's candidate debate and for all of you here for your interest and engagement in the future of New Canaan. My husband David and I have lived in New Canaan for over 27 years, and our 2 of our 3 grown children graduated from our amazing public school system. I was elected to the Board of Education for 8 years and then was elected by that board to serve as its chair for 3 of those years. Prior to my volunteer career, I worked in finance at GE Capital and as an assistant portfolio manager and securities analyst at an investment firm in New York City. I currently serve as senior deacon at New Canaan Congregational Church and vice regent for our local DAR chapter. As a resident of New Canaan, I've been involved in a number of local non-for-profits, and I'm hoping to continue my service to New Canaan as your next first selectman because I want to continue to give back to this community, and I have the right experience at the right time to serve the residents of this amazing community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from candidate Murphy Carroll.
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters, New Canaan debate team, and all of you for joining us today. My family has been privileged to live here for 27 years, and I don't see my friends and neighbors as red or blue. I see them as fellow New Canaanites and part of one New Canaan. I'm running to lead this government for everyone so that everyone is involved, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, leaving no talent on the sideline. Working together will lead us to make the best decisions as we face our challenges and preserve the characters of our town, and keeping our school great and moving forward. I've spent 10 years on the Board of Finance, gone through 9 budget cycles, and have done a myriad of capital plans. I know how our town government works and the people who make it work. With 30 years of Wall Street experience and degrees from Cornell and Wharton, I respect the taxpayer and will produce for the taxpayer. As first select woman, I will have an unwavering fiscal discipline as we preserve all we do well and address the challenges ahead of us together as one New Canaan. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll begin with question 1. As first selectman, what would your approach be to improving cell service in our town? Starting with candidate Carlson.
Thank you, Ankita. As first selectman, I would plan to work with the newly formed Utilities Commission in order to identify locations that we can have new cell towers or it doesn't even have to be towers. It can be DOS or satellite. There's many options and technology is improving. I would say to start off that I do not support any future development of cell towers near schools.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll.
Yes, cell service in the internet is basically the 4th utility. It's incredibly important to this town, and we do need to improve it. The people and residents near West School have made it abundantly clear that an option for large towers there does not work. I am very excited that we have reconstituted the Utilities Commission with such an incredibly deep resource of people. And I feel confident that with their leadership, we will get to the definition of the problem. The initial proposal put forward was defining a solution before we actually defined what the problem was. So with the drive study going forward, we will be able to identify what the issues are. And with the Utility Commission, they can lay out a bunch of options that people can evaluate with the facts. We have to define where our gaps are, and then with that, what the technologies available will be to move forward with that. It's about the community having a voice. We serve the community. Yes, we need the improvements, but it's very much important that they are involved.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson, your rebuttal.
I don't have really any rebuttal. I think Amy and I have very similar views on this issue. We need to find solutions to our cellular coverage needs for this community. We have many workers who are working from home these days, and it's an important problem to fix. But I am confident that our Utilities Commission, along with the newly elected First Selectman, can solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll.
Yes, I think Deanna and I have a similar approach on this. Again, this is about making sure the entire community is engaged in important projects and important events that, A, they're paying for, but it's part of their community. It is our job as selectmen not to necessarily put forth your vision. Certainly you might have an opinion, but we have to gauge what the entire community wants. We work for the community. We want to move things forward, but we are working collectively, and I think it's very important that everyone has a voice at the table.
Thank you. Question 2. Describe specific areas in the budget where you would increase or decrease spending and why, starting with candidate Murphy Carroll.
Could you just repeat that? An increase or decrease in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that one of the first jobs that you have as first selectman or selectwoman is to put the budget together. Fortunately, I've had experience in 10 years with the Board of Finance going through every single department and every single budget. What I really like about our process is that we help build the budget. We work as liaisons with all the departments in the town government as we build the budget, and the Board of Ed certainly builds their budget collectively with the Board of Ed. And so in terms of areas where we need to reduce spending, our capital is a very important part. We have a lot of buildings. I was involved in a large nonpartisan building study. We have to look very clearly about how we do our capital spend. We do have things we need to do, but we have to focus on, first, requirements, wants versus nice to haves. And we need to have a process in place that we are cognizant of what we are committing to, and that to me is one of the very important things we have to do going forward. So I would look deeply at our long-term capital plan. Additionally, in terms of the town government, we have added a number of people into our administrative staff at the town off budget. I think we need to look across all departments, benchmark us against other towns, which can be tricky because everyone does it a little bit differently. But see if we're staffed in the proper way in the proper departments. And then within Town Hall, I think if we restructure how people report, we will do a better job with that.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
Thank you. So the nature of government is the budget always increases. We have lots of contracted labor in this community with contractual obligations that increase annually. And having been the chair of the Board of Education, which controls 2/3 of this budget, those salaries go up mandatorily every year. So we work hard to control. We did work hard to control those increases, but by the nature of the way these contracts are working, we have increased spending. I would look at pretty much capital spending as an area that we could look to decrease. We've already, we have some big projects behind us now. We have the police station. We have the new library, which was $10 million from the town plus another $7 million letter of credit. We have the Playhouse, which is over budget, and so I think those are behind us. And so I think with interest rates rising, we're going to need to really look at controlling our capital spend from here on out. And I think the residents are going to look for a little breather with all the construction that's been going on in town. So I don't think people are going to be asking for a lot of new spend. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll, your rebuttal.
I've been spending a lot of time in capital since I've been on the Board of Finance, and I really feel I have a good handle on that. The interesting thing about capital spending in the town is it tends to be kind of lumpy. We have big buildings that like every 40 years we have to do. So, sometimes our capital spending goes up and down, but over time it does tend to level off, and our outstanding debt has been lower recently. We do have some big projects coming forward. So I think I'm very comfortable where we are with debt. We just have to pay attention to it, and I was involved in setting our debt guidelines. So,
thank you. Candidate Carlson?
Yeah, I think, again, probably not a lot of daylight between the two of us. In talking with Todd Lavieri, who's the chairman of the Board of Finance, there are, set parameters for how much interest expense we want and debt amortization we want to be handling every year. So, I would look to maintain those thresholds and be within those, and especially in this inflationary environment.
Thank you. Question 3. In your role as first selectman, what would your approach to managing affordable housing be for our town? Starting with candidate Carlson.
Thank you. I feel blessed to have on my committee one of the founders of CT 169 Strong. They've been strong advocates for better solutions from Hartford in affordable housing. My approach to affordable housing is 3-tiered. First, we need to get our moratorium. I understand why our first selectman wasn't going for it in this high interest rate environment. It's unlikely we're going to get a big development, a new development, but to give residents comfort that they have security, that we won't be, getting more development, we should go for that. I also said we need to have more interaction with Hartford. We need to get 830G changed. And finally, we need to develop and control affordable housing locally. If we develop it and control it, it's 100% affordable in perpetuity. If a predatory developer develops it only for 40 years and only 30% affordable. So we need to develop it here locally and control it.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll.
Thank you. Affordable housing is certainly one of the challenges that we're facing going forward, and this next Board of Selectmen that comes in, we are inheriting an untenable situation. We did not have to be in this position, but we are. And so what we need to do is we need to stop deflecting, stop thinking if we don't pay attention, it'll go away. We need a plan. It's very easy to blame somebody else, to blame a developer, to blame other situations, but we are where we are, and our requirement is to get an affordable housing plan in place, and the governor has asked us that specifically. We cannot kick it down the road. It's not easy. It's complicated. It will need some deleveraging. We will need to have creative approaches. If we do it internally, it is better for us, and we'll get to a better solution. But what we need to do as the first selectman is we need to prioritize it. And the first thing I'm going to do in the first selectman's office is get a whiteboard, put up the priorities that I see, and move forward on those. And the first one's going to be affordable housing, and we cannot wait. This is from July of 21. We have been our moratorium hasn't been in place, and we are exposed. Yes, interest rates are high, but any developer could come in and put another 830G in place. That is not planning our future. So we need to take control, get the good minds in this town together, and move forward with this now.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson, your rebuttal.
Sure. I don't feel like our rebuttals are rebuttals, but I wanted to just say that, as first selectman, I would make sure that we get an affordable housing committee constituted and working for the benefit of this entire community. I also want to mention that I have relationships across the state. I have, close relationships with first selectmen in other communities, and I think it's important. This is an initiative that's going to need both local and statewide prioritization. Sorry.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll.
I agree completely. We need to get an all hands on deck approach to this, but we can't just assume this law that's been in place for quite a long time is going to go away or get better. Affordable housing is a challenge in the entire country. I mean, in July, I was working on affordable housing issues in Colorado. We're not unique. And to think that we're going to get an easier, lower threshold, I think is not realistic, considering you have places like Electric Boat, which put on 10,000 new employees. We need housing.
Thank you. Question 4. Are you supportive of building more senior housing? And if so, what types are needed and what steps would you take to provide them? Candidate Murphy Carroll.
Senior housing takes a lot of forms. I've spent a good chunk of my career doing investments in senior housing, CCRCs, assisted living facilities, et cetera. So, and my mother happens to be a resident of New Canaan, and Waveney does like a terrific job. So senior housing can include everything from, the high-level nursing care to assisted living to congregate care to in-care, in the home care. So it depends what the definition is. I don't think senior housing, as I look at it, I think a senior housing attached includes care, not necessarily housing for older seniors. So if in terms of additional needs, I think that is something have to be discussed with Waveney. I've worked with them in the past in terms of senior housing task force. I know we've looked at CCRCs in the past. They're difficult and they're complicated. So in senior housing, I think you really have to look at the demographic trends and decide what the consumer is demanding. Are they looking for an institutional approach or approach within their home? And I know Waveney is developing many home care options, and people need to age in place, but aging in place gets difficult, and you do need other health resources. So I think it's certainly something to work with Waveney moving forward. And I am very happy that we do have a Waveney that takes care of people in town, and even when they are running out of funds, they'll take care of them.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
Thank you. I was just flipping through the Plan of Conservation and Development recent survey results, and if you poll the community, they really don't know if we need more senior housing. So I think we really need to dig in. Either we, when I was at the inn last week introducing myself to the residents feel like they need more affordable housing. But we need the community to also come along on that conversation. So I think we need to do some education in this community about, what it is and get a better idea of what we need in this community. If it is assisted living, we have multiple CCRCs in our surrounding community. So it's like, do we need to build it here, or do we have enough? We should look at what the capacity is in the other developments around in our other communities. And if they're oversubscribed, then maybe we need to look at it. But if there's lots of capacity in Wilton and Ridgefield and Stamford and Norwalk and Greenwich, we may not need to build it here. So,
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
One interesting other variable was senior housing. For an institution like Waveney, which has a very high amount of medical costs and unreimbursed care, the right combination of senior housing for a more independent senior can, in times, offset some of these losses they have in the rest of their program. So working, and we've discussed this in the past with Waveney. So again, we do need to know the level of the need, but it could be something that assists Waveney in their financial profile.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
thanks. I would just reiterate, I think we need to really understand what we mean by senior housing. Is it affordable senior housing? Is it, communal living senior housing? Is it assisted? Is it a CCRC? So I think there needs to be a lot more work done to understand, what our true needs are in this community.
Thank you. Question 5. Considering that unaffiliated voters make up a large block of voters in New Canaan, should they be better represented on town boards, commissions, and committees? If so, how do you propose on getting them involved? And if not, then why? Candidate Carlson?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? Is it unaffiliated? Is that what you said?
Yes, unaffiliated.
Sure. This was a question I was asked in my New Canaanite interview, and I believe we should just search for the most talented individuals to serve on our boards and commissions. Currently, the Republican Party is the largest voting bloc in New Canaan, followed by the unaffiliated voters. So I think that it would make sense to look to have some more unaffiliated voters on our boards and commissions to really represent the community. So yes.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
I feel so strongly that in this community, our government should represent what the makeup of our community is. This isn't 1960, right? We have 37% plus or minus Republicans, 37% unaffiliated, and 27% plus or minus Democrats. To me, not working aggressively to include everybody in government is leaving in a tremendous amount of talent on the side. And I don't think it just leaves a tremendous amount of talent on the side. I think it makes people feel less connected and less included in their community. I don't think there's a community in this country that has more skills, resources, expertise, and smarts than we have in this town. And I think it's ridiculous that we don't get them more involved. We're in the position where all the boards and commissions, just about every single one of them, are chaired by one party. I'm not saying the people aren't good. I mean, they can be very good. But there are certainly a lot of other people who would be willing to bring their skills and their resources. And when we get everybody on the table, we listen to people, we get them involved, I really do believe we'll have better solutions. And I believe people will feel government is more transparent. By definition, it will be, because you won't have one group that can talk about themselves. You need to bring everybody together. And this is one town, and I don't think the political stuff matters. We're one town.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
Thanks. I think a great way to get people more engaged is if we publicize more broadly what the openings are on our various boards and commissions. I think that's a way for people to understand how they can get involved, and then, apply through either through their various party organizations, or if they're unaffiliated, they can come directly to the first selectman's office or to the town hall, so that we understand who's willing to serve, and get a really good definition of what that service means.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
Oh, I agree completely. We should be holding basically a running tally of people interested in different departments, put their resumes in, letters of intent, and we should just have a group that we can always tap and they can express their interests. But, we have had things not move forward because it's one party felt that they should have control. The Affordable Housing Committee is held up because people could not agree that it had to be dominated by one party or another. It doesn't have to be dominated by any party. It just has to be done. And we have to go forward and move along.
Thank you. Question 6. What parts of the town charter should be prioritized if the town undertakes charter revision? Candidate Murphy Carroll?
In terms of the charter renewal process, I think there's a number of things that we should consider. One thing I know people have considered is the structure of the government, which we currently have the Selectmen, Board of Selectmen. I know people have considered whether we go to a city manager structure. That's complicated. It's a big change, but it's certainly worth looking at. And then within the Selectmen's, does it make sense that we have 3 selectmen as opposed to a broader group, just because of the FOIA regulations and people being able to talk among themselves? There are some other issues that people have considered, whether certain boards should possibly be elected versus appointed. I am a fan of the ones that are appointed staying appointed. Being we're running for office, it's hard to get people to run for office, and I think when you can appoint people, people are able to do their work without having any view to political affiliation going forward. It's interesting, too, that the selectman's job is just 2 years. It might make sense, seriously, for it to be a 3-year term or 4-year term. Many of our boards and commissions are set at 4 years. It's a lot of work to run, and by the time you get 2 years in, you're just kind of really probably hitting stride, and then it might make sense. So, I'm done.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
So I think one of the amazing things about this town is that we have a really strong charter, and it has served this community really well. I actually think some of the changes that were made in the last charter revision actually have created some of the divisiveness that we have seen creep into this community. And so I'm not sure that the changes that were made were actually beneficial for this community. So I would approach a charter revision very carefully. I think, and I would disagree on expanding the Board of Selectmen board. It's, as a Republican and somebody who likes to minimize government, I want fewer people and fewer, I think you get things done more easily when there are 3 people that are working together. I work well with people. I think it's a hallmark of how I lead. I bring people in, and I don't have a problem having an extra public meeting with, Amy and I are going to be on this board together. So, I don't have a problem having a public meeting with a member of the other party, just so that we can get things done and communicate. So.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll, your rebuttal? Oh, I agree. We should have public meetings, and I think we're going to have to structure it that way, and I think we will work well with that. I was just saying that is one of the things that people have considered. I wasn't necessarily advocating it one way or the other. And, you do have to be careful. You do get unintended consequences with some of these issues going forward. But the charter has served us well, but it is something that is detailed, and people should look into it, and it's a good discipline to look at it every 10 years.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Question 7. What is a decision you made while serving in New Canaan town government that, upon reflection, you would change today? Starting with Candidate Carlson.
A decision I made in town government? Wow, I've been in town government quite a long time. And I don't want to... I really can't. I'd have to go back and look at all my decisions. I'm pretty happy. I think, I was very open to the entire community as a Board of Education member. like the school start times changes. I think that my pushing back the board on the plans that they were looking at initially made us come to a better decision in the long run. And so I think listening to the community and engaging with disparate voices is an important part of being a community leader, and I have shown that I am willing to do that.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
Yeah, I think in my tenure on the Board of Finance, we see a lot of financing coming before us and projects and proposals. And about 5 years ago, I put forward a template that I'd hoped the Selectmen would use and that the Public Works would use. And before we looked at any project, we were supposed to have a very detailed list of reasons why, sources and uses, detailed spending, and I'm not talking every penny, but HVAC, boom, 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 and down to contingencies and a timeline. That worked for about a couple months, and then it went away. And I think we found ourselves under the last couple years with approving projects that came from the Board of Selectmen. They sound like a great idea. I'm not saying they're bad, without the details. And you can agree or disagree with the project, but if you have the details, you can put it forth to the community and say, this is what it's going to cost. I think a good example of where we fell short on this was the Playhouse, which is nothing for or against the Playhouse. We just should have demanded much, much deeper numbers. And unfortunately, we approached that a little too rushed and without doing the detail that we had to do, so that the community would know, in fact, what it costs. And they still might have said it was great, but I think it's our responsibility to let the community know what the options before us actually will cost and then make the decisions based on that.
Thank you. Candidate Carlson?
I have no further comment.
Yeah.
Okay. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
Yeah, and that is one of the things I really want to put back into discipline into the town. Look, we have terrific people working, and they work hard, and they're trying to do the right thing. We just need to put in place the structures that make their job easier. And this would make it easier for people coming forward with public-private partnerships. We can't just approve stuff because it's supposed to be this estimated number. We need the details, we need the correct assumptions so that we can know what we're getting into. And for the people who want to help and put the contributions forth, they should know the process.
Thank you. The candidates may now present their closing statements, starting with Candidate Carlson.
I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight, and for those of you watching from home for your commitment to becoming an informed voter. If elected first selectman, my priorities are first fiscal responsibility, finding affordable housing solutions that work for New Canaan, and community engagement and collaboration. Tonight, you've heard two different voices for the future of New Canaan. I have proven by being elected twice to the Board of Education and elected unanimously by both Democrats and Republicans 3 times as Board of Education chair that I have the ability and temperament to bring people together to solve problems and create solutions for all of New Canaan. If you like my message and my priorities, my leadership and financial services experience, along with my collaborative approach, I ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 7th, so that together we can forge an even brighter future for New Canaan. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Murphy Carroll?
Thanks to the League, thanks to you, and thanks to everyone for coming out. And Deanna, thanks for you for this discussion. The job of first selectman requires a number of things: experience, leadership, management, and prioritization. I'm the most qualified across the board. I have the most financial experience. I have the most bipartisan experience. I have the most how things really get done in town government experience, and I have the most leadership experience. I want to tap all of New Canaan's collective knowledge and experience to build solutions to the problems we face for our town. We'll get the plans in place, we'll execute them, and we'll not kick issues down the road. We have a huge group of unaffiliated voters. I think they're unaffiliated, not because they don't, because they can't find a home in the 2 existing parties. I want them to have a home in New Canaan. I want them to be involved, and I want everyone to be involved. Because we really are one New Canaan. And let's make everyone, this New Canaan, a town for everybody. And I hope I earn your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our Town of New Canaan First Selectman debate. We thank our candidates and our viewers for participating in democracy. Up next is Board of Education candidate debate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Big show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
Oh, perfect.
I'm your timer.
You're my camera.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Okay. Nobody else will be holding up the card, don't worry.
Okay.
1 year time.
Sounds good.
So we built in a little buffer. We're just going to wait till 7:15 to make sure that the viewers at home get to see this. So you have a little bit of time.
Crunch on this.
It was interesting. Yeah.
No judgment or nothing. It's all in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time that was
You've done this many times before, haven't you?
the second time.
How many years have you been doing the timing?
Sounds good.
The second time.
All right, well, you're not in this, obviously. No, she's not.
Yes, thank you.
Friends
Thank
with
you for that.
David's wife.
And I'm still on.
David's wife. Isn't she one of the voters?
We'll see what happens.
If I can do that, then yeah.
You know who David's to it. I was like, oh, can you please come to the podcast? He's like, he goes, well, I'm going to be sailing a bit, and I'm just wind, and like,
I know every.
and I think I met your mom. You know,
Oh yeah.
she's a riot.
Powerhouse thing.
So I met her at that, and I met her before.
Yeah, she is really
And
funny.
she really liked my mom. Where did we meet her? Peter was the first story of your family and Fayetteville.
Yeah.
I really met her initially. She's funny.
She is. She's 85.
Are you serious?
Yeah, for the end of February. She's my
So she takes them home and like
30.
okay, so it's not like she's taking Peter.
Oh God.
So she'll take them.
No. They should be
Still work
taking
at the
care of
store?
it. Yeah,
Does
she
she?
is.
My dad's 87. The guy that walks by.
Oh yeah.
Right now? Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for letting us know.
Good thing we're speaking very civilly.
Okay. Just pick it up.
Wait.
Go Phillies.
Or like that.
Good evening. First, a note about the rules, which I will enforce throughout the evening. Candidates have agreed in writing to detailed debate rules, which include sticking to the time limits, answering the questions being asked, refraining from speaking or making any disruptive noises outside of their allotted time, and more. As a reminder to each of the candidates, you may ask the presenter to repeat any question as needed. Audience, during the debate, as I mentioned before, let's respect one another by remaining quiet, no comments or buzzing from the floor. At the end of this debate, Well, I got the wrong one. At the end of this debate, it will be over, and we will proceed on to the pre-recorded Board of Education debate. Thank you. For this debate, we will have two student presenters, Drew Bench and Thomas Crehan. Drew is on the debate team and the student body president of New Canaan High School, and through such a role, he has led the charge in raising thousands of dollars for various charities. Thomas is co-captain of the debate team and also volunteers for the local anti-drug nonprofit RAM Council. Drew will ask the first three questions for this debate, followed by Thomas. Drew?
Welcome to the candidate debate for Board of Education. Our candidates are Brandon Hayes, Matt Wexler, Laura Kelly, Matt Campbell, Giacomo Londi, and Lauren Connolly Nussbaum. Based on random draw, we begin with opening remarks from candidate Hayes.
Hi, thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to the league and you as students for participating. My wife Ainsley and I have been here for 15 years. We've raised 3 boys, all of whom have been through the New Canaan Public Schools. Excuse me. I've been on the Board of Education for the last 8 years, including serving as chairman and vice chairman. I've absolutely loved it. Working with fellow board members, members of the town leadership, and town government. And I've really enjoyed working with the administration and the leadership of our outstanding public schools. I'm really hoping I can continue to do that for another 4 years. In addition, just as background, I'm an investment banker, commute to New York City every day, and so I have a financial background, and I've been spending the last 8 years spending a lot of time with the Board of Education budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
I'd also like to thank everyone for participating and for the league for hosting. I graduated from New Canaan High in 2000 and had such an amazing experience that I moved back here with my wife and 2 children, one of whom's in Sacs and the other is in South. Civic duty to New Canaan has been a part of my family since we moved here. My wife, mother, and father have all taught at our schools, and we have been active volunteers in town. I myself coach in the youth leagues, and am a WISE Adventure Princess troop leader. While at New Canaan High, I had the privilege of being on nationally ranked lacrosse and physics teams. I played guitar in the Battle of the Bands, engaged in service clubs, and took some amazing electives, all while receiving special education support. It is this well-rounded experience that I seek to preserve. A focus on individual achievement, a personalized experience based on the uniqueness of each child, a curriculum that is tailored to the needs of New Canaan alone. My goal is to keep distractions out of school, to keep them focused on molding your children into happy, productive, successful adults, for them to have the desire and the means to move back to New Canaan if they want. What we have here is special, and I will ensure that it remains so for the next generation.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
Hi, my name is Laura Kelly. I'm Caroline, Addison, James, and Spencer's mom. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. I love Connecticut, and I love New Canaan. I grew up here, and I moved back to New Canaan for my 4 children. I wanted a community that was dedicated to education, families, and traditional values. I believe our schools are at the heart of our town, and I want to keep New Canaan values at the heart of our schools. In 1 year, I'll have a child in the high school, at Sacs, and West Elementary. We need to maintain merit-based grading, promote student safety, invest in our curriculum, and engage all families, especially those receiving support services. As a board member, I would like the academic achievement to be our collective focus.
Thank you. Candidate Campbell?
First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I've lived in New Canaan for 10 years. Like many of you, we moved here for the excellent school system. My wife and I, we have 4 children, a recent graduate, a senior, a 4th grader, and a 1st grader. So I have a unique perspective among the candidates and BOE members in that I've been through the school system once, but I'm also just beginning my 2nd tour of duty. I wasn't appointed by a party or asked to run. I was elected at a caucus by a wide margin, much to the chagrin of people on both sides. I want to preserve the schools and protect them from political ideologies that distract from the purpose of public education, which is to unite us as a community to educate our children in objective truth. You'll hear a lot of platitudes during the campaign. Everyone wants great schools, but there are clear differences. I want to preserve our schools by teaching objective truth and respecting the boundaries between parents and the state. Others want to inject political ideology into the classroom under the guise of innovation and progress. Please help me in my efforts.
Thank you. Candidate Londi?
Thank you to the league, the debate team and students, Channel 79, and my fellow candidates for the Board of Ed. It's a pleasure to represent unaffiliated candidates and talk about important issues for our town and our wonderful school system. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Giacomo Londi. I've lived in New Canaan since 2019. We have 3 kids in the school system, 1 at Saks, 2 at West. I grew up in northern Vermont, small town, graduated from the local elementary school, high school, and the University of Vermont. So I know what it's like to go through public school system, and I'm super supportive of them. I'm running for a 4-year BOE position, as I believe if there was ever a time where nonpartisan, issue-focused people should be on a local Board of Ed, now is absolutely that time. My areas of focus are, number 1, genuine and measurable excellence in education, 2, transparency and governance, and 3, expanding opportunities for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Connolly Nussbaum?
Thank you, League of Women Voters, Channel 79, and high school students for the opportunity this evening. Hello, New Canaan. My name is Lauren Connolly Nussbaum, and I am a candidate for a 4-year term on the Board of Education. My husband Matt and I have lived in New Canaan for 10 years. We have 3 children who attend Saks and South schools. I am grateful to live in New Canaan every single day. I am running for the Board of Education to do the very real work that ensures our schools remain strong, safe, innovative, inclusive, and excellent. To continue this legacy of excellence, we have very real, very local issues facing us in the short and the long term. If we can put students first, continue to engage families, and support our teachers and administrators, we can achieve our district's goals and graduate young adults ready to take on a global, dynamic society. I look forward to tonight's debate. I want to thank all of you for being here and those of you who are at home for tuning in.
Thank you. We'll start with our first question. School enrollment is expected to increase dramatically in lower grades in coming years. Please give specific examples of how you would prepare for this. Candidate Hayes?
Sure. I think first off is something that we're already doing is looking at it more deeply. So looking at, class by class, I believe we've already started to engage another consultant to look at it, again, a little bit more deeply as to when we think the classes might actually increase in size, and then make sure that we understand, where in town, that increase may occur. We need to make sure that we plan from a building standpoint, so make sure that we do have space. If we don't have space, we need to talk about capital spending to create that. The thing that's interesting about it is it could be temporary. So obviously you have this big cohort of people that moved into town a couple of years ago. That may or may not occur in the future. So we could have a situation where there's a big, bump of students coming up through the elementary schools, and then numbers start to decline again. So we really need to understand not only the near-term forecast, but the long-term forecast, and make sure we're planning both from a space standpoint and from a personnel standpoint to be able to handle it.
Candidate Wexler?
Yes, obviously looking at our current capacity is very important, but teacher recruitment, I think, is going to be a concern for us. If we are to not only continue or see the cohort that's coming in, but continue to need additional teachers to cover all of the larger classrooms, we know that good teachers at least, are in low supply, and so that's going to have an impact not only on budget, but also the school's ability to fill substitute teacher spots, which we know has been a concern of late. So I think that there's going to be a lot of impact in terms of what we need to consider regarding budgets, regarding recruitment, and making sure that our kids are still being driven to excel.
Candidate Kelly?
Yes, I think one of the most important factors when we consider this is budget and how we communicate that to the parents and how we use the budget effectively for a change like this. I think our town is very good at taking parent feedback, and so when we know about an increasing cohort coming in, I would love to do a community survey and see how parents feel about it. And then I think that this is a great example of how the board needs to communicate with the administration effectively, to make sure all the teacher input is also registered, and that we can find a balance between what parents are looking for their students and the kind of environment that they want with a larger cohort, and what the teachers need to be successful in the classroom with a larger cohort. I echo Matt Wexler's concerns that hiring and retaining good teachers is, I think, always a challenge, and making sure that we have adequate substitute teachers is also a concern. And so I think it would be a priority of the boards to communicate with the administration to make sure that we're aware of all of their concerns about staffing to maintain our teacher-student ratios.
Candidate Campbell?
Yeah, I think that the first step is understanding what our true capacity is. I think a lot of us, we see the wall of enrollments coming, but understanding where can we flex up and down, and maybe it's in different schools, within the different elementary schools, there's excess capacity in some versus others. And so that's one thing that we need to address, and to really understand where that excess capacity is. I think that, again, it is a budget issue. We should budget for not only the short term, but the long term. And I think that's one of the important things about our budgeting process. It needs to consider hypotheticals. It can't just be a rubber stamp, but sort of think about how we flex up and down in our budget based on several different factors. Obviously, one of the most immediate concerns is the growing capacity and how that's expected to flow throughout the schools. We see it right now in South School. My son in the fourth grade, he is one of the largest fourth grade classes they've had in recent history. I think there's 130 fourth graders. And so there are a lot of large classes, much larger than we've seen in our 10 years here in New Canaan. He has 20 children in his fourth grade class. And so what additional capacity do we have? Where is that capacity? And then thinking of flexing, how can we flex capacity? I agree with what one thing Brendan mentioned, is that it may just be a temporary blip, right? And that's probably what it looks like, especially if you look through to interest rates, and obviously we're beyond COVID. And so it may just be a temporary blip, so we need to think about that from a budgeting and from a capacity standpoint.
Candidate Lundy?
So this is one of the benefits of living in New Canaan. A lot of people want to be here. A lot of people want to go through the school system, and this is the byproduct of it. I think we need to break it down a couple different ways. One is demographics in the country are actually this is counter to that in a way. So is this a blip or is this not a blip? I think that's a key issue. Some of you may be aware that I live next to a place where they want to put a large building. Some of those buildings actually are driving some of these enrollment numbers. So if you talk about the first Selectmen debate that just came before us, we need to understand how much what I would call dense housing is coming, how much is that driving student enrollment, what's the timeline for that? Is that going to hit at the same time? Are those kids going to come in at different stagger, if you will? Another thing that's probably not popular with people, but my oldest son went to kindergarten in the city, in a city school, great education, kindergarten education. He had 24 kids in his kindergarten class, so we're going to have a discussion about how many kids we want in different classes. He also had multiple teachers in that class, so that gets to the recruitment issue. We're going to have to be creative here to make sure that we don't sort of like build another school or build something that we then basically have to pay for forever. So we're flexing permanent space for a temporary situation. So it's going to require a lot of study because there'll be a lot of money at stake.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum?
Thank you. This is a challenge that I've been following for the last year or so in attending Board of Ed meetings. And I think candidate Hayes made a great point. Is this a long-term growth in population, or is this kind of a shorter-term challenge? The Board of Ed, the current Board of Ed, is planning to hear updated numbers from the consultant company at their next Board of Ed meeting on November 6th. So hopefully we'll have some more information then for the community to start thinking about this issue. This issue for me would be, if I were elected to the Board of Ed, be my day one priority, because we can't have an ad hoc solution. We can't back into this. We need to be forward facing and thinking about teacher hiring and retaining, but also teacher coaching and support. How do our teachers handle a classroom that might have a larger student population? And I think that this is a big challenge for our community, but also an opportunity for New Canaan Public Schools to show how they embrace challenges, rise to the occasion, and solve problems creatively and collaboratively. Thank you.
Candidate Hayes, your rebuttal?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Candidate Wexler?
Nothing to add.
Candidate Kelly?
Nothing to add.
Candidate Kemble? Candidate Londy?
As with all issues, I think we should look at fixed and variable costs. And that this issue to me really stands out on that.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum?
I just appreciate that this question has allowed all of us to talk about issues that are very important, and we're doing it in a collaborative and positive manner. And I think that's great. Thanks for the question.
Question 2. When there are conflicting viewpoints between parents and professional educators and administrators, would one carry heavier weight in your decision-making process? And if so, why? Candidate Kelly?
I think the role of the Board of Education is to be a liaison between the parents and the administration. So I think one thing that I would hope to do as a candidate is to work with my fellow board members to ensure that we understand the concerns of parents in the community, and then take that to the administration, and in the executive sessions, in the meetings, make sure that we're working collaboratively with the administration to come to an outcome that parents are happy with in the town. I think ultimately our schools are great because we have so much parent involvement, and our administration benefits greatly from how invested parents are in their schools and in their children and in the journey. And I think because of that, it's our responsibility as board members to make sure that we're effectively communicating with the administration and come up with a collaborative answer that both teachers and administrators are happy with, but ultimately the parents are happy with.
Candidate Campbell?
Yes, I think that when conflicts arise between parents and educators, I think speaks to the importance of focusing on objective truth. I mean, when we rely on objective truth and on data, there shouldn't be a conflict. I think when we delve into outside of the scope of what's appropriate for the state, then parents may have objections, and that can cause that conflict. I think as it relates to academic and sort of objective truths, that's why I always tell my kids, you speak the truth and you don't have to worry about the explanation, right? And I think that's the approach that our schools should take. Work with parents. We should be transparent so they understand what we're teaching, where we're coming from, what our philosophy is, right, as far as dealing with some of the some more subjective issues. But sticking to facts, sticking to data, and sticking to objective truth is the best way to resolve, or better yet, avoid any conflicts with parents.
Candidate Londy?
So this is sort of a broad question, so let me break it down as sort of how I would think about it, which is professional experts in any field. There's going to be a lot of experts about a particular issue, and there's going to be a lot of viewpoints. And so if there's this conflict that you're talking about, I think that really merits community discussion about why are we doing something, and why is this effective, and why do we believe that this is the right change for the town or for the school district. And I think that can be supported through data and through analysis so people can come on board, and that's a dialogue process. And I think parents will respond to seeing this information, seeing this data, and will come on board. If you're talking about a teacher, views on a kid, that's a different kind of discussion and probably merits maybe getting a second opinion and being able to have an open dialogue on those kind of issues. But I always believe we need to understand there are many different experts on fields, and to see the data and allow people to understand why people are coming to a certain viewpoint. And I think generally people will be reasonable when it comes to that, when they get on board and understand things.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum?
Yes. When a conflict arises between teachers or admin and parents, it's vital that both parties are, meeting at the table together and communicating effectively and clearly with one another. We have nearly 4,200 students in our district. Conflicts are inevitable. As a special education parent, I sit across the table in PPT and IEP meetings at least once a year. And there may be moments where a student's needs aren't being met. There may also be moments where A teacher requires the support of their administrator to help them manage a classroom or manage potentially a challenging relationship between student or students within the class. Conflicts are inevitable. So I think what's important and what we should focus on, both as a board, but also as a community, is to use the systems that are currently in place. There are terrific systems in place. It starts with the homeroom teacher. It elevates to the department head. Then it goes to the administrator. There are terrific processes in place that are currently working. And I would want to continue to educate parents about those processes and how they can collaboratively and also in a, in a manner that's positive, engage with teachers and admin to solve problems. Thanks.
Candidate Hayes.
So it's not black or white, obviously. When you're on the Board of Ed, you have to make decisions. The way I think about it is what's best for kids, right? And you have to go through all the various issues, inputs, both parents, educators, administration, and figure out what's the best path forward. Sometimes it's an easy decision. A lot of times it's not. In the case of just one example, school start times, the community did not want school start times to change. There were people who really wanted it to change, people who really didn't want it to change. And we as a board had to chart a path forward, consider all the issues and options, and make a call as to how to move forward. We, by the way, at the end of the day, weren't all completely aligned, but we had to take everything into account. Some people were disappointed still at the end of the day that we changed school start times. There are teachers who are not so happy that we changed school start times, but we did what we thought was best for New Canaan kids to be able to move things forward. What's important as well is that we don't just listen to some subset of the community, take that in and make a decision based on what we're hearing from that subset of the community. We have to center on what is best for kids. There are some decisions that have been made recently that, in my opinion, I haven't agreed with, that aren't best for kids, but that's what really I focus on and will continue to focus on.
Candidate Wexler.
I think it's completely situationally dependent. I mean, as Candidate Hayes said, how many parents are bringing up this issue? How many teachers are bringing up this issue? Is it a small vocal group that is making demands on the larger community? At the end of the day, what the real question is what is the role of the board in its relationship with the schools and its relationship with the parents? And my view is that the board is the fiduciary of the parents within the town. They vote us in. They want us to act as their voices. And so in broad strokes, I'd have to say I would lean on the side of the parents. They are going to tell us what they would like out of their schools, what values they want communicated, how they want their children taught. And we have to listen to them and ultimately prioritize those parents' needs, perhaps at times, when appropriate, when the data suggests, above the needs of the teachers. That being said, there are going to be times when teachers should be listened to more when it comes to how to educate kids in the classroom. So it's very situationally dependent.
Candidate Kelly, your rebuttal.
I think the most recent or widely known example of this is the school start times. And I think you saw the current system play out fairly well. We took a long time to discuss it. It wasn't rushed. It was when the first rounds came out, some people didn't agree with it. They organized, they came together, and then the administration has continued to be innovative with that. After it was already implemented, we sent up a follow-up survey to get community input again, and I think that that's the most important thing. As we take in feedback, we continue to innovate and move forward, not get stuck in the way of the decision.
Candidate Campbell.
Yeah, in addition to relying on data, that's never going to satisfy everyone, right? Because people care deeply, passionately about their children and the school system. What I think is important, in addition to relying on the data, is also transparency. There was mentioned the school start times. A lot of parents are frustrated because they felt that it lacked transparency. And so I think even if the data goes against the parents, being transparent is the most important thing. I think that brings people together, it calms people down, and lets people understand why decisions were made, right? And everyone wants the best what's in the best interest of the kids.
Candidate Londy.
Yeah, I was also exercised about the start time issue, and I think that was a good example of how actually the community could have come together. It was COVID, so we couldn't get together sort of face to face, but I think when you have these issues in front of the town, getting people together to talk about them, and I think it would be very easy to articulate the issue for the high school kids on start time, but it's also important to articulate the issue for the elementary school kids, also with the math and the science, and we get to a good solution.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum.
I think it's important that we also remember that the relationship between admin, teachers, parents, and students requires some level of trust. No one can do their job, and no one can send their child off to school without some level of trust. So I introduced that here to say we should trust our teachers and administrators that they have the best interests at heart. And we should trust our parents that they love their children and that they are seeking the best education possible. Thanks.
Candidate Hayes.
Yeah, we definitely need to listen to the input from parents as well as the administration, not act as a rubber stamp for the administration. At the same time, we really need to make sure that we don't just act as a mouthpiece for certain people within the community, take things that we hear and then make decisions immediately based on what we hear. It's really important as a Board of Education member that you not do that. And as a board, you really dig into the details and the issues and make the best decision on behalf of the kids.
Candidate Wexler.
I agree that we need to make sure that we don't listen to small vocal minorities within our community. I think as we're talking about start times, another great example of how the board came to a great solution was around masks and making sure that we started to push back on Hartford, as well as finding a good solution with our goals for this year.
All right. Question 3. Taxpayers want top schools, but also expect our town government to manage costs well. Please describe a specific area in the Board of Education budget where you would increase or decrease spending, and why. Starting with Candidate Londy.
Thank you for that question. So tying in with the start time discussion, that is an interesting one because basically the costs were driven by a few things, but primarily with busing, and that's sort of a uniquely American thing with the school bus. And I think what I found when I looked at the school busing costs, which are quite substantial, is actually we're sending a ton of seats that are not being utilized around our town 3 times a day, times 2. And the question is there any sort of efficiency when it comes to our busing setup? And that could be consolidating routes, that could also be encouraging more kids to walk, that could be other issues like that. So that's one area. The reality is most of these costs in our school system are driven by the labor contracts, and the only way you basically make progress on labor contracts is through efficiency, and I think that's a tough one to look at with regards to the classrooms. I mentioned it before about how many kids you want to have in a class. So it's a really difficult one. It's at the margins of what you can cut, and I think most of our peers, including if you look at like DoD schools, we're all in the $23,000 to $25,000 per kid range. So I wish there was a simple solution to costs, but it's very, very difficult.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum.
Thank you. I think it would be difficult to justify reducing spending if our student population grows. That said, one area where we might be able to find ways to bring students back into our district is to increase spending on a pilot program like the Literacy Academy, which is teaching dyslexic learners how to read and write and communicate effectively in district. And that means that we don't have to fund an out-of-district tuition. And that is a really exciting initiative that's happening right now. It's growing. It's something that the Board of Ed has done beautifully in supporting and advocating for, and I applaud them in that. So that is one area that I would advocate for Increasing spending would be these types of pilot programs that might then decrease our spend in outplacements. Thank you.
Candidate Hayes.
I've got two areas. So first, I agree with Giacomo on busing. I would focus that, though, on SACs. So we've been spending some time, and we'll spend some more over the next year, looking at the school day schedule at SACs. As people probably know, the upper division and the lower division start at very different times. And so trying to find a way, potentially through busing, to improve that would be helpful. And the second is we have an excellent counseling department at New Canaan High School, but they're stretched. They do a really, really good job with both academic counseling and then college counseling. But I think we could use probably 2 or 3 more, is my personal view. It's something we've discussed over the years, and they always say we're good, we're doing a fine job, but I think they could use some more support. Thank you.
Candidate Wexler.
So I would expand and continue to hire more teachers, and with the goal of helping children to continue to find their passion and what excites them. I think we need to focus on building jobs, building students for the jobs of tomorrow. So digital entrepreneurialism, I think, is a big focus that we should be expanding. Business is a course that we should be offering. More civics classes so that we can raise responsible citizens. Even expanding our trades and making sure that we have the right jobs for a growing and diverse economy. There's obviously a ton of ways that we can spend our money. Ensuring that kids are driven to excellence and can find what drives them to excellence, I think, is really one of the fundamental roles of the school.
Candidate Kelly.
I think the budget is one of the most effective ways our board communicates with the town. The priorities of the budget are the priorities of the board. I think that that's the relationship communicated there. And I think that that's what you saw with school start times. When these parents organized, they came together, they expressed a concern. Our current board paused on what they thought the rollout was going to be. They went to the budget, they looked for solutions, they increased buses, and they spent some more money to find parents a solution. I think we're currently in the state right now ranked 52nd in student spending, which is below Darien and Westport. I have 4 very different learners. I have children who receive services and children who excel, and I don't think that that's uncommon. I think a lot of families are trying to navigate deeply different needs of their students. And I think the one place I would expand our budget is in our phonics and the Achievement and Literary Academy. My daughter was a wonderful recipient of the Achievement Academy this summer, and it was a great experience for her. I would also love to see some resources put into finding teachers with certifications to help those plans and to reduce our student-teacher ratios.
Candidate Campbell.
Yes, I think that there are a few things that we can cut and examine our budget more closely. One, I would argue that there are dues that we pay and participate into associations that aren't really aligned with the mission of New Canaan and serve as sometimes political action groups or political interest groups. I think that's frivolous spending that we don't benefit from. I also agree that transportation is an area in which we need to tighten our belt or at least think of more efficient ways for transportation. Just to give you an example, my backyard is literally abuts to the soccer fields at Sachs Middle School. I have a couple neighbors who go to Sachs Middle School. There's a bus that comes by, right? They cut through my yard and they're welcome to it, but there's a bus that goes by. And so thinking about how we spend money on transportation. I also think that when we think about the budget, we need to spend more time in thinking about scenarios as to where we could cut and where we could flex. I think that what we need to understand is that our budget is heavily dependent on property values. Obviously, property values are heavily dependent on interest rates. Interest rates are rising. And so who's thinking about the 10% budget cut? Or who's thinking about the 5% budget cut, right? What would that look like? We need to get ahead of that so that we're not scrambling at the last minute to figure out what we need to cut and risk jeopardizing or cutting special services that are really important to our students. So we need to really closely evaluate and pass a fine-tooth comb through the budget.
Candidate Londi, your rebuttal.
I didn't realize we were spending money on this question too. So if I were going to spend money, I would expand the pre-K program. I've been clear about that. But just one thing I think we should keep in mind about demographics and enrollment. We have a ton of kids. I think by my number, have around 600 kids that go to private school. Some of them are going to schools paid for by the district, but a lot of them are paid for by the parents. So we're sort of getting a double dip from the parents in the property tax, and they're also not sending our kids to the school system. So we need to understand that dynamic, because that's a lot of money.
Candidate Connolly Nussbaum.
No rebuttal for me, thanks.
Candidate Hayes.
Just a couple comments. First, I don't think we spend money, on outside groups that aren't important to what we do as a Board of Ed. I don't think any of them are political. We're actually getting good information from, various outside groups that we spend money on that help us do our job, help the administration do their job. In terms of, big budget cuts, I don't really foresee that happening. That is, something that would have anything like 5 to 10% would have a drastic impact on the New Canaan Public Schools.
Candidate Wexler.
No rebuttal.
Candidate Kelly.
No rebuttal.
Candidate Campbell.
Yes, I agree that the 5 to 10% impact would have a drastic impact on our schools, but that's why we need to plan for what's possible, right? We're living in very uncertain economic times. We need to be forward-thinking, not just rubber stamping budgets.
Thank you.
Question 4. What role should our schools play in teaching students about sex education, mental health, diversity, and inclusivity? Speaking first, candidate Wexler.
These are obviously important topics, and one that I think we're going to find the most divergent thinking on. It is my belief that there is a role of the school in teaching those topics. However, I believe that they need to be, 1, taught in an age-appropriate way, and 2, they need to be taught in a way that does not create a divisive environment within the school. From what I can tell of some of my the opposition, they would like to drive thinking and ideology which may in fact create a divisive environment, whether it be teaching privilege to a town that has an average income of somewhere in around $225,000, or race-based ideology within the school. I don't think is good for anyone. Everyone should be treated as individuals, and everyone should be treated as those, as in terms of what they produce and give to the schools as individuals.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Of course. Question 4. What role should our schools play in teaching students about sex education, mental health, diversity, and inclusivity?
Great. I think a lot of us as a community had this discussion last year when we went through the district goals, and there was a lot of input from the community. And I think the board unanimously across the board came together and decided to work a lot of those goals to make them custom for our town, reflecting what parents wanted and what would work for the administration and what teachers wanted. I think I would just say while the process of being elected to the Board of Education is political by nature, I don't believe that the day-to-day activities of the board are political in any way. And I think that you see this roll out with the voting record of the board. Almost always the voting record is unanimous. And I just think that we have a great system in our town of taking in parent feedback, administration feedback, and coming up with a solution that is right for our town.
Candidate Campbell?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back and say what I always say. We should focus on objective truth. And so certainly sex education has an important part in health and biology. I mean, it should be, as Matt Wexler mentioned, it should be age appropriate. And that's what we should focus on. What's age appropriate for teaching these topics? I also think that as we focus on health or sex ed or even diversity, right, it shouldn't be political and it shouldn't be ideology. It should be fact-based, right? I also think that there needs to be transparency with the parents. People need to understand, And even if necessary, there's obviously the option to opt out. They should know. I mean, if these are sensitive topics, well, we should share the curriculum with the parents and the talking points with the parents ahead of time, allow them to choose if they want to opt out or not. But I do think transparency and sticking to truth and not political ideology is the most important. What I will say is that we need to be careful that we, as a state institution, right, a public school, we don't encroach on the realm or the sphere of the family, right? And that's, I think, we need to respect those boundaries. And I think that's the concern. No one wants to get rid of, objective truth in schools. We want to respect boundaries of parent and home, of parent and homes and schools.
Thank you. Candidate Lundy.
Sex ed, diversity, mental health, what was the fourth?
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity. Absolutely, these issues should be discussed in the schools, and I think I went to a session at Saks, I think a week or two ago, where they talked about sort of what they were doing on the health side. They had teachers there. You could ask questions. I think you could get further information about the curriculum. That was all good. I think what the school system's doing about the mental health with regards to the ruler and these other aspects where they start at a young age is great. So what I say is if the mind is not calm, it's not going to be learning. And that's just sort of, as I see my kids get older, you can see it more and more, the need to be calm. The question is, what is age appropriate? And there, to be honest, I would actually listen to some various views from experts about what is age appropriate and are we doing the right thing, if you will, on that. I think there's been potentially some cultural shifting with regards to that, and I think we need to understand that as parents who have moved on. And the diversity issue is a really challenging one because I view diversity now as starting to be defined as a whole bunch of other things rather than what I think traditionally diversity has been viewed on. So I would just caution the board and others not to define diversity so broadly that it actually has no meaning, because diversity is important to really understand some differences.
Thank you. Candidate Connolly Nussbaum.
Thank you. I believe that the school absolutely has a role in teaching these very vital topics and, in many cases, life skills. Mental health is vital to everyone sitting in this room tonight. If our mental health is not being looked after, how do we participate with one another as a community? And that goes all the way down into our school buildings. How do we teach our kids the tools to identify a mental health issue or challenge, seek out the proper help that they need, and then get back to the business of learning? Kids can't learn if they're dysregulated. That is just a fact. Now, when it comes to sex ed, I attended the same talk that Giacomo attended, or Candidate Lundy, sorry. And no problem. And in that presentation, we were told the days that the 5th grade would learn about puberty. You could keep your child home if you don't agree with what's being taught. The transparency is there. Our teachers and admin are doing age-appropriate work around all of these issues. And I'm excited about it because we're doing very important work as a community. So I just want to assuage any fears. Nothing inappropriate is being taught. And I think as a community, we need to continue to trust one another in the process of public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes.
Yeah, these are hugely important issues that should be covered in the New Canaan Public Schools. They are covered in the New Canaan Public Schools, and the reasons they are, and I agree with many of the comments, mental health is critically important for kids. There have obviously been challenges over the years, which I'm sure many of you have read about. It's been a real focus on the Board of Ed and among the administration. We'll continue to focus on that. As it relates to diversity and inclusion, also important so that kids understand not only how they fit in vis-a-vis their peers here in New Canaan, how they get the sort of EQ to be competent as they become adults, but also as they go out into the world to understand where they fit in the world. And really that's it, just to understand, how to relate to others in a positive way. Thanks.
Thank you. Now rebuttals. Firstly, candidate Wexler.
Mental health of our students is incredibly important, as is building EQ. I think we need to make sure that we as the board would have some oversight and knowledge as to what degree it's being taught and pushed in the classroom. Emotions are important, understanding emotions are important, but the overdoing of emotion just begets more emotion, and that's not healthy for anyone. And so I think we just need to make sure and keep an eye on it to make sure that our students are still excelling and focusing on what they need to do versus their feelings.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly.
I think our community, I think parents deserve collaboration with the administration, and I think one way to do that is transparency. I don't think there can ever be enough transparency on these topics, and I agree. I attended the info session as well. They're great, and if parents have more questions, could maybe something we do, supply a lesson plan, all sorts of options that we can do for parents to make them feel like they're a part of it. And I agree in trusting our administration, but we also need to trust and verify.
Thank you. Candidate Campbell.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I do think that these are important, but also the concern for many parents, in which I share, is that, as Candidate Lundy mentioned, is this a guise under which we can introduce several topics, right? We should have a clearly defined scope, and it should be transparent. Again, trust but verify.
Thank you. Candidate Lundy.
I think this is a touchy subject, and I think this is a great opportunity to sort of further educate parents and families about what's going on in modern society. That it could be very different than what you dealt with as a kid, and bring everybody along as the kids and the families.
Thank you. Candidate Connolly Nussbaum.
While these topics can be considered touchy, I think we need to remove that from it. We need to turn down the temperature on these topics. We're an incredibly gifted, talented, smart community. We can discuss hard things positively. I believe in New Canaan. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes.
I agree with Lauren. No, I think we need to not fear these types of issues. We need to, deal with them head on and do it in such a way that is age appropriate. I think we're doing that in the public schools. I think the parents know what we're doing, and I think we're doing a pretty good job at it.
Thank you. Question 5. Book bans in classrooms and libraries are making national news. Since individual parental preferences vary on this topic, should any single group of parents override choices made by professional educators in classrooms and school libraries in New Canaan? And if so, why? Speaking first, Candidate Campbell.
Any single group of parents? No. I do think that we should focus on what's age appropriate. I don't think that, whether it's Dr. Seuss or Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird should be banned. No, I don't agree with that. I think that those are classics, and I think that those are things that we need to. They're discussion points. They're things that we can discuss at the appropriate age with our students. Again, teaching our students objective truths in science and humanities, not listening to any single group of parents to ban a book, but also using common sense as to what's age appropriate, and that varies. I mean, from kindergarten obviously to 12th grade, it varies dramatically.
Thank you, Candidate Lundy.
So just for transparency, my wife works for a very large book publisher and is involved with marketing books. So to put that out there, and take it with what you'd like to on that. I think this ties in very well with the previous subject, which is basically some challenging issues. I think sounds like we all agreed here about the age-appropriate nature of things to be discussed, and my view is just tie those two issues together. And it's not about book banning per se. My sense is that the librarians at our schools do a very good job at picking the right books for their schools and their students, and I haven't gotten the sense that we have an issue on this. With regards to individual people or whatever, pulling books out of libraries, no. I think, libraries are by definition very expansive, and people should find their home in the library. If you're talking about sort of explicit content that's not appropriate for a particular age group, I think the librarian hopefully has good guidance from the Board of Ed or their supervisor to make sure we're picking the right books. But I don't see this as an issue in New Canaan. I certainly hope it's not.
Thank you. Candidate Nussbaum?
Thanks. I have to agree with candidate Lundy. This, I don't believe, is an issue right now in New Canaan, and that is due to the fact that our teachers and librarians are doing an exceptional job picking age-appropriate texts. In addition to that, they're sharing their syllabi at the beginning of every year, and I'm sure many of us in this room have inboxes full of emails from our teachers telling us what books our students will be reading in that semester or year. If any parent in our community feels uncomfortable with a book, there's a process in place. You can ring the teacher, email the teacher, let them know that your student won't be reading that book. Additionally, in the school library, and I know it's specifically at Saks because my 13-year-old wanted to check out the Hunger Games, I had to sign a permission form to agree to that. And that was a great process. I was glad to know what she was reading, and I would be glad for every parent in this community to know what their students are reading. So I don't believe it's an issue here in New Canaan, but the question asked, should any single group override teachers when it comes to book bans and book decisions? No, I don't think any single group should. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes?
My answer is the same. No individual group should override the decision, and the decision is ultimately the Board of Ed's decision. It's working with the administration, working with librarians, teachers, as to what is the most appropriate, what's the best material that could be there for kids to read or otherwise consume, and the Board of Ed has to do all that tough work. It doesn't mean they can't listen to teachers and make a different decision. It doesn't necessarily mean that they can't listen to parents and make a different decision, but that's the work of the Board of Ed, and it's ultimately the Board of Ed's decision.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
I find it interesting that my Democrat colleagues don't believe that this is an issue because they're running a banner on the New Canaanite that says book burning is so dark ages. So there you go. So anyway, I don't believe in book banning, or I don't believe that we should be filtering any information except when it comes to age appropriateness. I think that anything that might be of question should be brought to the town, and we should have a discussion on it. The parents should be allowed to weigh in, and we should hear all sides, because ultimately, we're all parents. We all want what's best for our children. There's some parents that may want certain exposure, some parents that may not. And ultimately, we need to, one, provide the transparency for parents to make their own decision, but two, provide the option for parents to perhaps pull their kids out for that lesson, as Ms. Nussbaum said.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
Yes, I believe that books and curriculum should always be age appropriate, and I think that alongside that, there has to be transparency. I think this is an area where you can't over-communicate with parents what is going on. I have found it a bit frustrating as a parent. There is not a mechanism on the district website that I'm aware of where you can search the library catalogs. You can go into the school, you can request things, but you can't actually look up the catalog. I have also had a middle school student who needed a book signed out by a parent. I think that's a great practice. But if you wanted to check how many copies there were, there's no way to do that. And I just think that things don't ever need to be hidden. I think that the transparency is the winning strategy. When our administration works with parents in a honest, transparent way, I think the whole town wins.
Thank you. Now rebuttals. Candidate Campbell?
So I'm all about what's effective, and if I were a book banning person, I don't think highlighting particular books to ban is going to be effective at getting fewer people to read it. So I'm not really sure what the strategy is behind this whole issue, but that's sort of where it is. So,
thank you. Candidate Nussbaum?
When it comes to transparency, every single one of us is welcome to email a librarian, email a principal, email an assistant principal, a classroom teacher, a language arts teacher, and I've found them to be incredibly responsive. So if you need an answer on a book or curriculum, check the public website for the New Canaan Public Schools or get in touch with the teacher. I find that they're incredibly responsive and willing and wanting to help. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes?
Nothing to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
I think why on the majority of interactions I've had with the administration and the board, they have been collaborative and welcoming and responsive. That has not always been the case. And I believe that that is one of the primary roles as a board member, is that when a parent has a tough conversation or doesn't feel like they're being heard from the administration, that they feel like they have a board member that they can reach out to and can advocate on their behalf.
Thank you. Question 6. In addition to rigorous academics, what, if anything, should the school system do to prepare students for life beyond New Canaan? Speaking first, Candidate Nussbaum.
Thank you. I think it's vital that we continue to invest in our innovation initiative. Our superintendent, Dr. Lutzy, said at a recent Board of Ed meeting, 2/3 of the jobs that our students will graduate into don't exist yet. They don't have a name. We don't know what they will be. So I think it's vital that in addition to rigorous academics, we continue to invest in our remarkable and forward-leading innovation initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes?
I agree with respect to, with respect to innovation. I think the other thing that's super important is getting our kids, with what's gone on with COVID over the last, 3 or 4 years, essentially colleges haven't really changed their method of instruction. They haven't, changed things to reflect the fact that high schoolers coming out of high schools throughout the United States haven't necessarily had the same experience that their predecessors had. So really helping those kids, to my earlier point, understand what they're going to be faced with when they get to college, academically and otherwise, help them make that transition. And, not only from an academic standpoint, but also understanding, how their sort of social skills and how they're going to interact with others when they get to college is super important. So we need to continue to focus on that and get them those college counselors that they need.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
I think I mentioned some of these before. I think we need to certainly invest in teaching about the jobs of tomorrow and making sure that we have the right educators in place to be able to do so appropriately. So whether it be digital entrepreneurialism, trades, using technology to further their goals and how to do so is very important, and I think it should start in the high school. Beyond that, ensuring that we are the school does a fantastic job with its special education program, and the school does a fantastic job with its gifted and AP programs. I think making sure that our, it's called our average student, our middle of the road student, is still receiving the type of focus and push that they need in order to fulfill what they're promised, right? That fulfill what's best for themselves. And so making sure that they're not, left behind as we focus, we put our efforts elsewhere.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
I think when we look at prioritizing academics and what our graduate looks like and what they're prepared for, I think one of the most important things we can do is really invest in our K-3 phonics learning. We know that those phonics skills in those first few years greatly impact our high school students and their ability to perform and to enter those AP classes and to excel. And I think that I would love to continue to see focus and resources put at the Achievement Academy and the Literary Academy. I think that is incredibly innovative and a great resource to our town. I also think one of the great things that the board does is we create our own curriculum, and I think when we do that, it allows our schools to be dynamic and meet our students where they are, whether they're in the challenge program, whether they're in the special ed program, whether they are just trying to be the best version of themselves. I think it's one of the most important things that our town does, and I just would hope to continue to support that.
Thank you. Candidate Campbell?
Yes, I think one of the things that we can provide is hard skills for our students. I think that as we look at the economy and how it has evolved, and it will continue to evolve in the near future, most of our students will be entrepreneurs or small business owners. I mean, even if you're a doctor, you're a small business owner, right? Maybe you start a startup, or you have a digital marketing company, or whatever it may be. It may not be directly related to business, but yet you're expected to know and to understand the language of business, which I refer to accounting as the language of business. I think we should prepare our students better to have those hard skills, right? Is there a basic accounting program or basic sort of literacy, financial literacy program, and to help them to manage their business? Maybe it's start off with a babysitting business, or maybe it's an online business that they have, something to give them the hard skills to succeed going forward. I think also another thing that we're deficient in, quite frankly, is our civics education. Our students are required 1 semester of civics education in order to graduate, yet many of them don't really understand how the U.S. government works, or how our local governments work. And so I think more focus on that will allow them to succeed and to understand and to make more of an impact in society.
Thank you. Candidate Londy?
I feel for these kids graduating from New Canaan. They have a great experience, but they're up against a ton of people with very similar experiences. And now the number of applications per these individual schools. So how to actually sort of differentiate yourself is really, really hard. And I think we should be thinking about that. How do we make our students from New Canaan have a little special something that's different from other towns? And people are just going to compare us with the Dariennes or other similar towns around the country. So I think one thing would be public speaking, critical thinking. How are we open to receiving new ideas and pivoting with that? Potentially return of old school home ec. How do you actually make a meal? Can you make a meal? Can you actually manage what you're soon going to have your own household? Can you fix a tire? These sort of basic life skills. Are we teaching those skills so when kids leave the house and they have to do it on their own, they can actually survive in that setup without calling home or calling a plumber for a large fee?
Thank you. Now rebuttals. Firstly, Candidate Nussbaum?
Thanks. I'll just say that there are some awesome electives offered at the high school that do teach some of these life skills. So we do have those available. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hayes?
Yeah, I was going to say, we do have auto shop and we have culinary arts too. But one of the things we're working on is Portrait of the Graduate at the Board of Ed. Some community members, actually a large number of community members, have been part of that. And that's really a focus throughout the New Canaan Public Schools on a number of different things. Just a couple are, courage and curiosity, to make sure that our graduates have that really embedded in them. And when they go out into the world, they, espouse those areas.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
As colleges continue to change their admissions requirements, it's becoming more challenging for New Canaan, who once would send about 20 kids or so to Ivy League schools, to do so, and again another 50 to top tier schools. Which is why our motto is distraction-free schools. It's making sure that the schools are focused solely on developing our children through academics, athletics, and arts, so that they can be that much better. That's that little special sauce, because we're not going to be distracted by other educational.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
I would just add that I think that one of the best things the administration can do is bring the parents into the learning and graduate experience. I think if we help parents feel that they're part of their students' educational journey and the entire family is invested in meeting the child where they are and helping them build a supporting roadblock to successful graduation, it's one of the best ways that you can bring the best out of the child, when the parents and the administration and the student are all working on the same team together.
Thank you. Candidate Campbell? Thank you. Candidate Londy?
I think academics are a given when you're going to these big institutions, and I think it's really how do you make these kids unique in their own way, and that's something we got to help them with.
Thank you. The candidates may now present their closing statements, starting with candidate Hayes.
So I'd love to continue to represent the town on the Board of Ed for the next 4 years, as I've been doing for the past 8. I've loved working with my fellow Board of Ed members, the broader community, working with the administration, and the outstanding teachers that we have in our schools. I think we can continue to do the excellent work that we have been doing, and continue to improve in a bunch of different ways, some of which I've mentioned tonight. So I'm hoping that you'll vote for me November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wexler?
New Canaan is truly a special place, and its schools are no different. I'm running for school board to keep our schools focused on providing best-in-state academics, championship athletics, Broadway-worthy arts, combined with the support systems for all children to thrive. I don't believe that our youngest learners should have the weight of divisive topics, and I think our schools should be free from political influence and social ideology. Mostly, I believe that parents should have a large say in the children's education and the values that it espouses. I'd like to give your children the opportunity and give them the environment to pursue their passion and to find what drives them to excel. I hope if you agree with me, I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly?
I would just say, I just want to make it clear that there's a difference between row A and row B in the selection. We're not the same, and on November 7th, you are making a choice. I will work hard to put New Canaan children first. I want our schools to remain free of political distractions and focused on academic excellence. Excellent schools require active stewardship. Committed community leaders are needed to plan, guide, and protect New Canaan Public Schools' tradition of exceptionalism. I will invest in phonics supports for our K-3 children, advocate for a dedicated SRO in every school, maintain merit-based hiring, and support innovative curriculums, ensuring our high school students are equipped to enter an increasingly competitive world. I want our schools to remain the brightest example of public education in the country and in Connecticut. Please vote for me.
Thank you. Candidate Campbell?
Yes, I'd like to take this time to address some of the racially charged attacks against me on the Democrat social media. Their comments suggest that I'm just a prop. I'm not a serious candidate. They've likened me to a black puppet, a character who is mind controlled by white puppet masters. They've claimed that I've subjugated myself to my white running mates as if I'm intellectually inferior. Diversity to them is people that look different but think the same. If you agree, you'll be included. Otherwise, anything goes, even racist comments. Their public words may be flattering, but they're false prophets of diversity and inclusion, and by their fruits you shall know them. To those of you that really care about diversity, if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to change the world, start at home. Don't let others use your good intentions and exploit them in order to push their agenda and their ideology on your kids. Your role as parents is the most important. I will work hard to make sure your kids have the best schools, but you have to work hard to make sure they're good people. Don't outsource your most sacred responsibility to those with ulterior motives. Vote row B.
Thank you. Candidate Londi?
Thank you for a good debate and excellent questions. What a vote for me for the New Canaan Board of Ed is, what is it a vote for? It's for a nonpartisan focus on addressing critical issues in front of our students, our families, and our school district. It's every child in New Canaan will be welcome and encouraged to come to our public schools where they'll excel like no other place. It's continuous and steady progress on improving both our in-class learning and physical infrastructure. It's learning from and exchanging ideas with best-in-class school districts, no matter where those school districts may be located. It's recruiting and retaining the best classroom teachers and staff. In short, you like me want a great school district to be even greater. I hope you'll consider using one of your 4 votes for me. For those voting for only one party, be it Democrats or Republicans, you can still vote for all of them and vote for me. You can find me on line C. I'm at the bottom, but I'll keep you on top.
Thank you. Candidate Nussbaum?
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, student volunteers. Thank you, Channel 79, and thank you, New Canaan. Congrats to my fellow candidates on a successful debate. When this election ends, those of us sitting at this table will no longer be candidates. I hope we will no longer be opponents. We will be New Canaanites, we'll be fellow parents, and 4 of us up here will be Board of Education members. How the board spends its time will deeply impact our kids and our community. If I am elected to the Board of Education, I will spend my time listening, learning, collaborating, and putting our students first. It is their education, after all. So, on Tuesday, November 7th, I am humbly asking that you vote for Brendan Hayes, Josh Kay, and Lauren Connolly Nussbaum. Thank you all.
Thank you. This concludes our Board of Education debate. We thank our candidates and our audience for participating in democracy.
Thank you very much for everyone in the audience, and thank you for our candidates for stepping forward and serving the public. It's very important. Local elections are where we all live, so please don't forget to vote on November 7th, and stay tuned for the pre-recorded Board of Education debate tonight, right as soon as we clear this room right here. So let's all be quiet. Hold on. Kiowa's going to take over. And how about a hand for our student moderators? I didn't have to do anything.
Just one clarification, we would love you guys to stay and watch the 2-year debate. It was pre-recorded last week for the Board of Education 2-year race. We had one candidate who had a scheduling conflict, but we wanted you guys to see all of the debates at once. So the 2-year debate will play now on the TVs. The candidates can leave and watch if they want. We will play that that debate now, and we just ask that everyone stay and watch.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Laura Smits. I'm from the Connecticut League of Women Voters of Connecticut, and we are here today for the 2-year debate for the Board of Education. We have a random draw, and the candidates today are Mr. Hugo Alves and Mr. Josh Kay. From a random draw, Mr. Alves will go first, and he will have the first opening statement, which is a minute long.
Good evening. First, I want to thank the League for putting this together and all the volunteers. I know that it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, and I appreciate you guys and Josh also accommodating my schedule this time. I'm Hugo Alves. I'm running for re-election for the 2-year term for the Board of Education. My wife and I moved here in 2010. In that 13-year period, we've built 2 homes, had 3 kids. I've served for 4 years on the board of the New Canaan Museum and Historical Society and on their finance committee. And then the Board of Ed, I've also served on the Resources Committee, which is the money end of it. I'm a financial planner by trade, and I'm able to bring that experience to the Resources Committee and to the board. And we've developed really great roots here in this community. I thrive on meeting people and getting to know people, and I keep an open mind and appreciate all different walks of life and opinions, and I'm just working for the best possible school system for our kids. Thank you.
Candidate Kay.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, to Channel 79, to our volunteers, and to Hugo for joining us this evening. I am Josh Kay. I'm a lawyer. I'm the product of public schools myself, just down the road in Wilton, and I'm a dad. My wife Megan and I have 2 kids. Our son is in East School in 2nd grade, and our daughter is in pre-K at New Canaan Community Preschool, and will be going to East School next year. So we're going to have kids in the public schools here in New Canaan for the next 14 years. I'm running for the Board of Education to do the work so that our schools can stay strong and continue to prepare kids to go out into the world, a changing world, and succeed. To achieve that, we're going to need a Board of Education that's focused on the issues that actually matter for our schools and always puts kids first. We can't afford to indulge in political distractions. As a lawyer, I spent my career rolling up my sleeves and doing the hard work to understand complicated and nuanced issues. I know how to ask questions, listen to answers, and I pride myself on building consensus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first question will go to candidate Alves. School enrollment is expected to increase dramatically in the lower grades in coming years. How do you propose we prepare for this?
So that's a great question. In fact, I brought that up 2 years ago at a board meeting when Darlene Pianka was reviewing all of our enrollment. I'd asked if any of that enrollment even considered the proposed affordable housing tenements that are kind of in the works at this time. And it hadn't. And the great news is people are moving to our town. It's great for our real estate values. It's frankly great for our schools. It looks like we're getting a more diverse group of folks coming from New York. Our property values are great. Everything, I think, is moving in the right direction. It looks like the enrollment, we'll be able to handle it for at least the next few years. I think the concern is really around what happens if and when these developments actually do occur. I often joke maybe we need to bring back center school, and I don't know that that's an option, but the board, Dr. Lutzy, we're well aware of it, we're on it, and we're going to continue to plan for it.
Thank you. Karen Kate.
Thank you. So we are expecting an enrollment boom, and we're continuing to gather data on what we expect enrollment to be. So this is an issue we need to look at very carefully. And there are really two things we need to focus on. First is space, and ensuring that we have enough classroom space and building space to accommodate what our student population will be. And the second is that we ensure that our administration is empowered to hire and retain enough teachers so that our student-to-teacher ratio isn't adversely impacted. So obviously to do that, we need to have competitive pay and competitive benefits. But we also need to create an environment where teachers feel respected and supported and frankly want to work in our schools. So we need to continue investing in our teachers with additional trainings and certifications and mentoring and coaching so that teachers are continue to be able to hone their craft and want to work here. So this is an incredibly important issue and something that we're certainly going to need to focus on as we learn more about what enrollment in the coming years will be.
Okay, any rebuttal? 30 seconds.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. K. Mr. K, Candidate K. Do you have a rebuttal?
No.
Okay, moving on. This question will go to Candidate K. The Board of Education receives input and guidance from parents, professional educators, and administrators, and outside consultants. In the event of conflicting viewpoints, how would you prioritize these resources in your decision-making process?
That's a really good question, and I think the answer depends on what we're talking about. I think all of the decisions the Board of Education makes should be informed by all of the relevant stakeholders. So obviously parents have important input, teachers and administrators have important voices as well. So if we're talking about the curriculum process, we have a really strong process for developing curriculum that I think takes into account the concerns of parents, the vision of the Board of Education, and also the experience of our professionals, our teachers and administrators. And they come together to create what I think is a really first-class curriculum. So I think taking into account as many stakeholders as possible, listening to those voices with an open mind, and trying to reach consensus is incredibly important.
Thank you. Okay, same question to you.
Yeah, no, it is a good question, one that's been on people's minds for the last couple of years that I've been in the board and as I was running the last time, and it's been brought to my attention this time, is what's the involvement that parents specifically should have in the curriculum, what's the involvement that consultants or outside experts should have in the curriculum development in other areas of our schools. And the reality is we all move here for the schools. We have an incredible administration that's done an incredible job of building just this community of wonderful and excellent teachers, and I think that we need to lean on them. Use the term respect, appreciate, make sure they're properly compensated. I'm suspect of a lot of the experts and consultants that we've had. I've been relatively disappointed at times, but the good news is that's why we have a Board of Education and our administrators are also really bright and look to us for guidance on that. So, and then our job as board members is to liaise between the administration and the parents to make sure that the parents know what is going on with their kids in the classroom and that they have a say in what the kids are seeing, what the kids are doing, what the kids are learning. But at the end of the day, people do move here for the excellent schools. And look, I'm not an educator, I'm not an expert, but I am a board member. And again, that's my job, is to go out, listen to the folks listen to the audience, which is our constituents, parents, and then bring what we hear to the administration, and then they call the shots.
Thank you. Any rebuttal on this question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving along, question 3, this will go back to candidate Alves. Taxpayers want top schools, but also expect our town government to manage costs well. Please describe a specific area in the Board of Education budget where you might increase or decrease spending and why.
So that's a good and timely question. It's interesting, when I ran the last time, we would get, we get comments from all areas of the public. Some folks think we're spending way too much relative to our peers. Some folks, never heard anybody complain that weren't spending enough, but the reality is, after 2 years on the board, one of the things that I pride myself on and us on is bringing a little bit more transparency to the board. There was already a lot of transparency with the budget. I think we have probably one of the most transparent budgets in the district, or sorry, in the DIRG. We brought a little bit more transparency by adding another budget meeting, and we have, especially never mind our success, but we have one of the lowest per pupil costs in our DIRG. So I think we're doing a really good job with the budget. My biggest concern is after just Monday's board meeting, when we got the facilities assessment, there's $30 billion in capital projects that we're anticipating over the next 5 to 7 at the max 10 years. And these are things that we just can't wait on. So that's where my focus is going to be in figuring out ways with the town to efficiently and effectively handle that, because it's important for increased enrollment, it's important for our kids to be healthy, our teachers to be healthy, we need good schools for them to walk into safely. So that's my biggest focus. I would say other areas of concern that have been brought to my attention are adding maybe some more turf fields, working on a better way to schedule certain sports games. I think those are important. And then lastly, security. I don't want to leave without that one, but that one's one I'll focus on as well.
Any rebuttals so far on this question, Mr. Candidate
Yeah.
Kay?
So from a 30,000-foot perspective, I think our budget is really strong. It's $103 million, and I think from what I can see, at least, the money is being very well spent. An example of an area where we can spend a little bit more but potentially save a great deal is actually in special education, which is hugely important to our district and fundamental to our mission as a public school. And when we talk about inclusion, this is a big part of it. The Literacy Academy is a great example of this. We've trained teachers in Orton-Gillingham, which is a method to help dyslexic learners read. And it's a great example of the tremendous work our professionals, including Bill Tespier, can accomplish with the support of the Board of Education, including your support, Hugo. It's providing an opportunity for kids to get a Windward or a Southport or an Eagle Hill education without the expense of those schools. So this is a huge win for our district. Instead of outplacements for the students who need full OG training, which can be incredibly costly, we're spending a little bit more to have OG training in our schools, but ultimately saving a great deal of money. It's also a win in terms of inclusion. Kids are staying in our schools instead of being outplaced. And for students who need a little bit of help beyond our foundations, but not the full gamut of OG training, the teachers who are already trained are there. So that's a really good example of how we can invest a little bit and potentially both improve our schools and also have a great benefit to our budget overall.
Okay, Mr. Rawls.
No rebuttal, just that Josh nailed it. I mean, I think that the way that we, and I've mentioned it before in the past in podcasts and other meetings I've had with folks, is that we spend money better than anybody on our specs department, and it's just the administration's done an incredible job. And I've heard a lot from parents, dyslexia, I don't know if it's on the rise or the diagnosis is on the rise, but that's a big concern. That's where parents send their kids to Southport School, and they'd be better off in our community. And this is just the first year of the Literacy Academy, and the results were incredible. We had 14 kids, now we have 24, or at least we started with 24 going to the second year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to you, Candidate Kay. In addition to rigorous academics, what, if anything, should the school system do to prepare students for life beyond New Canaan?
Well, I think that question is really important, and it focuses on an issue that's been kind of debated during this election a lot, which is on whether our schools should be focused on values that are centered on New Canaan or looking outwards. And from where I sit, every kid, and it pains me to say this as a parent, but almost every graduate, as soon as they graduate from New Canaan High School, is going to leave New Canaan. A lot of kids are going to come back, and I hope they do. But ultimately, we need to be looking outwards in terms of preparing our students to go out and succeed. So, in addition to academics, I think obviously the arts and sports are incredibly important components of our curriculum. We want kids to be able to go into our schools and thrive, find their passions, find the thing that excites them. And having the rich extracurricular offerings that we have is incredibly important. The additional thing, and I actually would classify this as academics, but I think some might not, is broader, softer skills in terms of thinking about innovation. Right? We have an innovation initiative in our schools that's just getting started. That's a tremendous program. It teaches kids how to think, to work collaboratively, to problem solve. The soft skills that are transferable as technology changes and are incredibly important as we think about educating kids for the future.
Okay, thank you. Candidate All, same question to you.
A lot of that I actually agree with as well. I think one of the things that I found most interesting and most entertaining during a board meeting was when they had this video snippets of our kids. I think this is senior year, they get to have internships within the town, within like local businesses, within the town hall, and it's just awesome to watch. And I think we already do a pretty phenomenal job, which is why so many of our kids do end up so successful in college and then in the real world. Josh is right. The innovation committee, I was in on a number of those meetings, and that's just getting ahead of basically everybody else, right? It was STEM, and now it's innovation. We've got the Dome. I think New Canaan continues to invest in our kids' future. I think we do spend a lot of time with the soft skills. I agree that that's incredibly important. I'm in sales, so that's like empathy is paramount. Asking good questions, understanding the people around you and the people you're talking to. One of the things that came up in my table at the portrait of a graduate, and it was actually from the two kids, and I was the only adult that suggested that financial literacy be like a top 7 attribute. And it's funny that the two kids, actually, one of them was in middle school at my table. That was something that he had commented on, which I was really happy to hear. It's funny, these kids they're hearing their parents talk, they're watching the news, and they know that this is something that's really important. So I think if we had to add that, and then I was at a meet and greet last night, and this isn't the first time I've heard it, but some more mature folks want shop to come back. So if we could bring back shop class, maybe that make a few people happy too.
Mr. Kay, a rebuttal on this one.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Hugo said. I think financial literacy is a really interesting topic because that's one of the mandates that's come down from Hartford this year. And I fully support local control. I think New Canaan schools are great because of leadership in New Canaan and not because of mandates from Hartford. But as we think about, there's a requirement that there be a half credit of financial literacy that we are figuring out now how to put into the curriculum. So I think that presents a challenge because it could displace other curriculum, but we need to think through how to do it carefully.
Mr. Alf, anything to add on this one?
We're good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Moving forward. All right, Mr. Alves. What, if any, topics do you feel are meant for the dinner table versus the classroom?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good. I was waiting for that one. That was a doozy that Josh and I were waiting for. All right, topics that are good that are meant more for the dinner table. This is a tough one. I went to the parent health workshop the other day, and it was actually a lot more sparsely attended than I expected. But I kind of felt for the teacher that was giving the presentation because you could tell he was kind of guarded in his delivery of what was taught in health between K through 5th grade. And I think that we do a really, really good job of finding that balance. I think better than other districts, according to some folks that I've heard, as far as keeping like male teachers with the boys of young age, the girls teachers with the girls. As far as what specific topics, I think that Josh and I'll probably both agree, like politics really just need to stay out of the classroom altogether. Nobody needs to know whether you're a Democrat or Republican or unaffiliated. And I just think that we need to be careful with some of the national stuff that's becoming just going around the country, coming in through Hartford. There were 20 different, that's one of them, there were 20 different laws that were passed the first half of this year. And a lot of them seem relatively benign, but just really understanding what those are and making sure that our administrators can translate that into the appropriate curriculum. But look, I think they just kind of the most common basis stuff: keep religion at home, keep politics at home, and just listen to the parents to make sure that, again, that transparency piece.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because I think a lot of the topics that we might have discussed aren't appropriate either for the classroom or the dinner table, right? The kind of things that maybe we talked about in health class, or not. I think religion is an incredibly important thing. Those kind of core moral issues that really belong at home and that can be talked about around the dinner table. I largely agree that politics should be kept out of the classroom. I think there are some contexts where it's important that we teach kids how to have a discussion about different viewpoints. And I think that analytical thinking is a really important skill if we're going to teach kids to go out and be productive members of society, to think for themselves, to grapple with arguments they don't agree with. I think that's a really important piece of what we do in terms of teaching people how to go out from New Canaan High School and thrive, because you're not always going to be talking to people you agree with. And having a conversation that's respectful and open-minded, but also principled, I think is incredibly important. It's got to be done in a sensitive way. It's got to be done respectfully, and we certainly have that around my dinner table as well. So it's not exclusively for school or for home, but there we go.
Okay, anything further on this, Mr. Alves? No?
No, thanks.
Mr. Kay?
No, thank you.
I'll get on that.
No
Okay.
need to rebut myself.
This will be our last question.
We made it through that one. We're good.
What?
That was unscathed.
That was a good question. Okay, this one will go to candidate K. What are concrete goals you hope to accomplish during your time on the Board of Education?
Sure. So there are three things in particular that I think we need to focus on. In addition to the kind of nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling, that's so much of the work of the Board of Ed. First, we've already talked about the expected enrollment boom. I think we really need to be focused on that, thinking ahead, acting thoughtfully and deliberately while we have time to do so. That's incredibly important. Issue number two is safety and security in our schools. We live in scary times, and I think this should be a completely nonpartisan issue. We all want our kids to be safe. The good news is that the town council and the first selectmen have already appropriated a substantial amount of money for school security. There is a plan that's being discussed in private, as it should be. We shouldn't be highlighting the security, potential security gaps in our schools. So Hugo knows what that plan is. I don't. He's not talking about it, which is the right thing to do. But it would certainly be a priority to ensure that that money is effectively spent if I'm on the Board of Education. And then the third thing is we need to be continually looking forward to ensure that our curriculum is gradually changing so that we are keeping pace with changing society. Look, when I was in school, I didn't learn how to use a slide rule, even though that had been important for my parents, because the world changed. The world didn't stop changing in 2000. So we need to look forward. We need to be thinking actively about the skills and abilities our kids need to graduate so that they can be prepared to thrive.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alves.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Josh and I agree on a lot of stuff. School security is definitely paramount, and it's not. I don't want to say that I'm concerned about it. It's just that we live in scary times. Things are evolving, and criminals and bad people just get smarter and more efficient, and we just need to keep up with the times. And we are moving forward through that in the administration with CAD. We've done a great job there, and need to continue to focus on that. I think that the Literacy Academy that we both talked about earlier in our special education department is already really, really good, but we need to make it better and improve upon it, and just continue to support Bill Tesber and his team as they move forward and create more Orton Gillingham teachers. I think we need to really stay on top of the Hartford mandates. I mean, they're mandates at the end of the day. They're not all horrible, but a lot of them we need to stay on top of so we can have creative solutions for things that we don't feel are appropriate necessarily for New Canaan, or at least not in the way that they come down. So keeping it local, innovation. I'm really excited to see how this portrait of a graduate comes out, because I think that's an important. I think if you don't have a wish without a plan is, a goal without a plan is simply a wish, and I love that we can actually put some concrete attributes to a student for our own vision. And then working with parents on field times, I think it's just been a lot of headaches, it seems, in the community for sports and field assignments and whether or not we have turf and if it rains. And as a coach of 3 daughters, I've, believe me, every single Saturday having to deal with the rain the last 6 weeks has been tough.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on this question from either one of you?
No.
Okay, this is a very civilized debate. I'm very impressed. We will start our closing statements. Mr. Alves, you may go first. 1 minute.
Does that mean we were boring? Should we have been more
No,
excited?
it's very refreshing.
Tip over the table.
Yeah, right. So, look, look, clearly 2 smart, nice people. Josh's probably smarter than I am, but maybe a little bit nicer. Who knows? Either way, we're both good guys running for the Board of Education. I do feel that experience means a lot. There's a very, very steep learning curve. Not to suggest that it's insurmountable, but it's steep, right? In the first year, you're drinking out of a fire hose, and it's a lot. All the acronyms that they use in schools, like, holy cow! I finally understand 80 to 90% of them. I'm still working on it, but there's a steep learning curve. I've managed to level that learning curve. I think with these significant expenditures, which frankly, that $30 million is the first I'd heard of it just the other night. Like, that's all I've been thinking about for the last 2 nights, and I think that my 15 years in financial planning is going to bring a tremendous amount of resource to the Resources Committee and experience in helping in that. And then just my ability to connect with the community. I've been here 13 years, got 3 daughters. I do generally like people. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, and you can ask both sides of people in the community, and they'll agree. So just want to earn your vote for another 2 years at least, and hopefully another 6 to 10. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kay.
So thank you again to the League of Women Voters, to our volunteers, to Channel 79. We in New Canaan have a tremendous school system, one of the best in the state and the country. And school systems like this don't just happen. They take hard work, careful thought, and dedication. And we have a long tradition of leadership on the Board of Education that is truly nonpartisan. Where you go to a meeting and you watch the board members, and based on the discussion, you wouldn't know what party a member was from. And I think we've strayed from that a bit in the last 4 years. And I'm running for the Board of Ed to help bring balance and to bring back that tradition. I think we need to take the temperature down, and I think we need to put kids first. There are short, medium, and long-term issues that our schools are facing that I think we all agree on, and we've spoken about some of them tonight. So if with focus and dedication and calm, I think we can keep our schools excellent, and I hope I can earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of New Canaan and the State League of Women Voters of Connecticut. And thank you for watching, and thank also to you guys for stepping up. It's important. Local elections are very important. Please turn out to vote on November 7th. Thank you.